Have you ever wondered if a single mark on your skin could hold the key to unraveling a mystery that spans generations? Imagine a birthmark so distinctive, so striking, that it becomes the thread connecting two families, revealing secrets that were meant to stay hidden. This isn't just a tale of coincidence, it's a story of fate, identity, and the profound impact of a seemingly insignificant detail. In a small town, nestled between the hustle of daily life and the quiet whispers of its residents, a dentist's routine examination takes an unexpected turn. Dr. Emily Carter, known for her meticulous attention to detail, notices a birthmark on a young patient's gum, a birthmark that mirrors one she had seen years ago. But this isn't just any birthmark, it's identical to one her own daughter had as a child. The discovery sends ripples through her mind, sparking questions that demand answers. As Dr. Carter delves deeper into the patient's history, she uncovers a tapestry of connections that intertwine her family's past with that of another. The birthmark, once a mere curiosity, becomes a symbol of a shared history, a link between two families who, until now, had no idea of their intertwined destinies. But the story doesn't end there. The revelation sets off a chain of events that challenges perceptions, tests relationships, and forces both families to confront truths they never anticipated. Secrets long buried come to light, and the impact of this discovery reverberates through their lives, altering their futures in ways they couldn't have imagined. As you watch this story unfold, consider the birthmarks you carry, both physical and metaphorical. What secrets do they hold? What stories are etched into your skin, waiting to be discovered? This isn't just a tale about a dentist and a birthmark, it's a reflection on identity, connection, and the unexpected ways our lives intersect. Stay with us as we journey through this remarkable story, uncovering layers of mystery, emotion, and revelation. The answers you seek are just ahead, and trust us, you won't want to miss a single moment of this incredible tale. Dr. Emily Carter had always prided herself on her keen eye for detail. As a seasoned dentist in a quiet suburban town, she had seen her fair share of unusual cases, but nothing quite like this. It was a routine checkup, a young boy named Noah sitting in the chair, his wide eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and apprehension. As she examined his gums, something caught her attention, a small, crescent-shaped birthmark on the inside of his lower lip. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably familiar. A chill ran down her spine as she realized it mirrored the very birthmark her own daughter, Lily, had as a child. But that was impossible. Lily had passed away in a tragic accident years ago. The thought that another child bore the same mark was both unsettling and intriguing. Determined to uncover the truth, Dr. Carter began to delve into Noah's background. She learned that he had been adopted from a distant city, his biological parents unknown. The adoption agency had provided little information, and the trail seemed to go cold. But Dr. Carter couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than mere coincidence. She reached out to the agency, posing as a concerned medical professional seeking information for health reasons. After weeks of persistence, she received a response, a single photograph of Noah's birth mother. The woman in the photo was strikingly familiar. Her features mirrored those of Dr. Carter's late sister, who had disappeared without a trace years ago. The resemblance was uncanny, and the implications were staggering. As Dr. Carter pieced together the fragments of this puzzle, she began to question everything she thought she knew about her family's past. Could Noah be connected to her in ways she hadn't imagined? Was he the child of her missing sister, or was there another, darker explanation? The more she uncovered, the more questions arose, each one leading her deeper into a web of secrets and lies. Meanwhile, Noah's adoptive parents, the Johnsons, were blissfully unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon. They had welcomed Noah into their home with open arms, raising him as their own. But as Dr. Carter's investigation progressed, she discovered that the Johnsons had their own hidden past. They had been involved in a legal battle over custody of Noah before the adoption was finalized, a battle that had been shrouded in mystery. The details were murky, but it was clear that there was more to their story than met the eye. The deeper Dr. Carter dug, the more she realized that the birthmark was just the tip of the iceberg. Each new revelation seemed to open the door to more questions, and the answers remained tantalizingly out of reach. Was Noah truly the key to unlocking her family's past, Or was he merely a pawn in a much larger game? The truth seemed to slip further away with every step she took. Story Gene. +3. Really RG. +3. Kyoma Ez. +3. As the story unfolded, it became clear that the birthmark was not just a physical trait, it was a symbol of something much deeper, a connection that transcended time and bloodlines. It was a reminder that the past has a way of resurfacing, often when least expected, and that the ties that bind us are not always as clear-cut as they seem. The mystery of the birthmark was just the beginning, and the journey to uncover its secrets would change the lives of both families forever. But even as Dr. Carter inched closer to the truth, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her, waiting for her to uncover what had been hidden for so long. Every phone call, every email, every piece of information seemed to be monitored, as if someone was determined to keep the past buried. The closer she got to the truth, the more dangerous the game became. And in the end, she would have to decide how far she was willing to go to uncover the secrets that had been kept from her for so many years. The answers were within reach, but at what cost? And would the truth bring healing, or would it open old wounds that were better left untouched? The journey to uncover the mystery of the birthmark was far from over, and the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty and peril. But one thing was certain, the lives of both families would never be the same again. Stay tuned, because what happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family, identity, and the secrets that bind us all. Dr. Emily Carter's pursuit of the truth had become an obsession. Each new revelation about Noah and his birth mother only deepened the mystery, pulling her further into a labyrinth of secrets and lies. But as she ventured deeper, the walls seemed to close in around her. Information that had once been readily available began to vanish without explanation. Medical records were mysteriously erased from the clinic's database, and phone calls to the adoption agency went unanswered. It was as if someone was actively working to erase any trace of Noah's past. One evening, as Dr. Carter was reviewing her notes at home, she received an anonymous letter slipped under her door. The message was brief but chilling. Stop digging. You're not ready for the truth. The handwriting was unfamiliar, and there was no return address. The warning sent a shiver down her spine, but it also steeled her resolve. She couldn't back down now, not when she was so close. Determined to press on, Dr. Carter reached out to a former colleague, Dr. Samuel Hayes, who had worked at the adoption agency years ago. He had always been a reliable source of information, and she hoped he could shed light on the missing pieces of Noah's story. They arranged to meet at a local cafe, but when Dr. Carter arrived, Dr. Hayes was nowhere to be found. Instead, she found a package addressed to her, left on the table. Inside was a photograph of a young woman who bore a striking resemblance to her late sister, and a note that simply read, "Trust no one." The encounter left Dr. Carter rattled. Had Dr. Hayes been trying to warn her? Or had he been part of the conspiracy all along? The lines between ally and adversary were becoming increasingly blurred. She couldn't afford to trust anyone, not even those she had considered friends. As the days passed, Dr. Carter's investigation uncovered more unsettling truths. The Johnsons, Noah's adoptive parents, had been involved in a legal dispute over custody of another child years before adopting Noah. The details of that case were sealed, but the implications were clear. Their past was far from spotless. Had they been hiding something? And if so, what did it have to do with Noah's birth mother? The deeper Dr. Carter dug, the more obstacles she encountered. Her clinic's records were hacked, her personal files tampered with, and her every move seemed to be under surveillance. It was as if someone was determined to keep her from uncovering the truth. But she couldn't stop now, not when the stakes were so high. Then, just as Dr. Carter thought she had reached a dead end, a breakthrough came. She received a call from an anonymous source who claimed to have information about Noah's birth mother. The caller refused to meet in person but agreed to speak over the phone. They revealed that Noah's birth mother had been involved in a high-profile case years ago, a case that had been swept under the rug and erased from public records. The caller warned Dr. Carter to be careful, as there were powerful people who would stop at nothing to keep the past buried. The revelation sent shockwaves through Dr. Carter. Had Noah's birth mother been involved in something criminal? And if so, what did that mean for Noah? The questions multiplied, and the answers remained elusive. As Dr. Carter prepared to confront the Johnsons with her findings, she received another anonymous message. This time, it was a photograph of Noah, taken recently, with the words "He's not who you think he is" scrawled across it. The message was a chilling reminder that the truth was still out of reach and that someone was watching her every move. The closer Dr. Carter came to the truth, the more dangerous her quest became. She had uncovered a web of lies and deceit that stretched back years, and there were those who would go to any lengths to keep the past hidden. But she couldn't turn back now, not when she was so close to uncovering the truth about Noah and his connection to her family. In the end, Dr. Carter was faced with a choice: continue her search for the truth, risking everything in the process, or walk away and let the past remain buried. The decision was agonizing, but she knew one thing for certain: the truth had a way of coming to light, no matter how deeply it was hidden. As she stood at the crossroads, ready to make her choice, a final message arrived. It was a video, showing Noah standing in front of a mirror, his back to the camera. As he turned, the camera caught a glimpse of his face, and for a split second, Dr. Carter saw a flash of recognition in his eyes. It was as if he knew her, as if he had been waiting for her all along. The video ended abruptly, leaving Dr. Carter with more questions than answers. Had Noah known all along? Had he been waiting for her to uncover the truth? Or was this just another piece of the puzzle, another layer of mystery to unravel? The answers remained elusive, but one thing was certain: the story was far from over. And as Dr. Carter prepared to confront the Johnsons and uncover the truth about Noah, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Dr. Emily Carter's relentless pursuit of the truth had begun to unravel the very fabric of her reality. Each new discovery about Noah and his birth mother seemed to deepen the mystery, pulling her further into a web of secrets and lies. But just as she thought she was closing in on the truth, a new and unexpected twist emerged, threatening to derail everything she had worked for. It began with a phone call, a call that Emily had been dreading but knew was inevitable. The voice on the other end was calm, almost eerily so, and the message was simple: stop digging. You're not ready for the truth. The words echoed in her mind long after the call ended, leaving her with a sense of dread and uncertainty. Who was behind this warning? And what did they know that she didn't? Determined not to be intimidated, Emily pressed on, reaching out to her contacts at the adoption agency for more information. But her efforts were met with resistance. Emails went unanswered, phone calls were ignored, and when she managed to speak with someone, they were vague and evasive. It was as if someone was actively working to keep her from uncovering the truth. Then, a breakthrough came, at least, she thought it was. Emily received a package in the mail containing a series of photographs and documents that seemed to corroborate her findings. Among the materials was a birth certificate for Noah's birth mother, one that matched the name and details she had uncovered earlier. But something about it didn't sit right. The document appeared to be a forgery, hastily put together with inconsistencies that raised more questions than answers. As Emily examined the documents, she realized that the deeper she dug, the more she uncovered about her own family's past. Hidden connections, long-buried secrets, and betrayals that she had never imagined began to surface, casting doubt on everything she thought she knew. The lines between ally and adversary blurred, and Emily found herself questioning the motives of everyone around her, even those she had trusted the most. But the most unsettling revelation came when she discovered that the adoption agency had been involved in a series of questionable practices. Documents were falsified, records were erased, and children were placed with families under dubious circumstances. The agency's involvement in these activities was well documented, yet it had managed to operate with impunity for years, its actions hidden behind a veil of secrecy and corruption. As Emily pieced together the fragments of this puzzle, she realized that the conspiracy was far more extensive than she had ever imagined. Powerful individuals, both within and outside the agency, had worked together to conceal the truth, manipulating records and silencing anyone who came too close. And now, Emily had become a target, someone who had uncovered a truth that threatened to expose the entire operation. With each passing day, the pressure mounted. Emily's personal life began to unravel as well. Her relationships with friends and colleagues became strained, and she found herself increasingly isolated. The weight of the truth was taking its toll, and she wondered how much longer she could continue without breaking. But she couldn't stop, not now. The stakes were too high, and the truth was too important. Emily knew that she had to press on, no matter the cost. The lives of Noah and his birth mother and countless others depended on it. As she prepared to confront the adoption agency with her findings, Emily received another message, this time, a photograph of herself, taken from a distance, with the words "You're next" scrawled across it. The threat was clear: she was being watched, and if she didn't stop, there would be consequences. The danger was real, and Emily knew that she was walking a fine line between uncovering the truth and becoming a casualty of it. But she couldn't turn back now. The truth had a way of coming to light, no matter how deeply it was buried. And Emily was determined to ensure that it did, no matter the cost. Dr. Emily Carter's relentless pursuit of the truth had begun to unravel the very fabric of her reality. Each new discovery about Noah and his birth mother seemed to deepen the mystery, pulling her further into a web of secrets and lies. But just as she thought she was closing in on the truth, a new and unexpected twist emerged, threatening to derail everything she had worked for. It began with a phone call, a call that Emily had been dreading but knew was inevitable. The voice on the other end was calm, almost eerily so, and the message was simple: stop digging. You're not ready for the truth. The words echoed in her mind long after the call ended, leaving her with a sense of dread and uncertainty. Who was behind this warning? And what did they know that she didn't? Determined not to be intimidated, Emily pressed on, reaching out to her contacts at the adoption agency for more information. But her efforts were met with resistance. Emails went unanswered, phone calls were ignored, and when she managed to speak with someone, they were vague and evasive. It was as if someone was actively working to keep her from uncovering the truth. Then, a breakthrough came, at least, she thought it was. Emily received a package in the mail containing a series of photographs and documents that seemed to corroborate her findings. Among the materials was a birth certificate for Noah's birth mother, one that matched the name and details she had uncovered earlier. But something about it didn't sit right. The document appeared to be a forgery, hastily put together with inconsistencies that raised more questions than answers. As Emily examined the documents, she realized that the deeper she dug, the more she uncovered about her own family's past. Hidden connections, long-buried secrets, and betrayals that she had never imagined began to surface, casting doubt on everything she thought she knew. The lines between ally and adversary blurred, and Emily found herself questioning the motives of everyone around her, even those she had trusted the most. But the most unsettling revelation came when she discovered that the adoption agency had been involved in a series of questionable practices. Documents were falsified, records were erased, and children were placed with families under dubious circumstances. The agency's involvement in these activities was well documented, yet it had managed to operate with impunity for years, its actions hidden behind a veil of secrecy and corruption. As Emily pieced together the fragments of this puzzle, she realized that the conspiracy was far more extensive than she had ever imagined. Powerful individuals, both within and outside the agency, had worked together to conceal the truth, manipulating records and silencing anyone who came too close. And now, Emily had become a target, someone who had uncovered a truth that threatened to expose the entire operation. With each passing day, the pressure mounted. Emily's personal life began to unravel as well. Her relationships with friends and colleagues became strained, and she found herself increasingly isolated. The weight of the truth was taking its toll, and she wondered how much longer she could continue without breaking. But she couldn't stop, not now. The stakes were too high, and the truth was too important. Emily knew that she had to press on, no matter the cost. The lives of Noah and his birth mother and countless others depended on it. As she prepared to confront the adoption agency with her findings, Emily received another message, this time, a photograph of herself, taken from a distance, with the words "You're next" scrawled across it. The threat was clear: she was being watched, and if she didn't stop, there would be consequences. The danger was real, and Emily knew that she was walking a fine line between uncovering the truth and becoming a casualty of it. But she couldn't turn back now. The truth had a way of coming to light, no matter how deeply it was buried. And Emily was determined to ensure that it did, no matter the cost. But just when Emily thought she had reached a breaking point, something happened that made her realize the full extent of the danger she was in. One evening, as she was leaving her office, She noticed a black SUV parked across the street, its engine running. The driver sat motionless, staring straight ahead. Emily's heart raced as she quickened her pace, but the vehicle remained where it was, its presence unnerving. The next day, Emily received a call from her sister, Sarah, who had been out of town for a conference. Sarah's voice trembled as she explained that she had been receiving strange messages, cryptic notes slipped under her door, phone calls with heavy breathing on the other end, and an unsettling feeling that she was being watched. Emily's concern deepened when Sarah mentioned that she had seen the same black SUV parked near her apartment building. The realization hit Emily like a ton of bricks. The threats weren't just directed at her, they were extending to her loved ones. The danger had escalated, and she was no longer just fighting for the truth, she was fighting to protect those she cared about. Determined to shield Sarah and herself, Emily took steps to increase their security. She installed cameras around her home, changed her phone number, and even considered hiring a private investigator to track the movements of the mysterious SUV. But despite her precautions, the sense of being hunted lingered, a constant presence that gnawed at her every waking moment. As the days wore on, Emily's paranoia intensified. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was always watching, always waiting for her to slip up. Every unfamiliar face on the street, every unexpected noise in the night, sent her into a spiral of anxiety. The weight of the mystery, the threats, and the uncertainty pressed down on her, threatening to consume her. And then, just when she thought she might find a moment of peace, a new message arrived, this time, a video. The footage showed Sarah walking down a quiet street, her face illuminated by the glow of a street lamp. As she passed an alleyway, a figure stepped out from the shadows, blocking her path. The video cut off abruptly, leaving Emily with a sickening sense of dread. The message was clear, the danger was real, and it was closing in. Emily had no choice but to confront the forces arrayed against her, to uncover the truth no matter the cost. But as she prepared to face the unknown, she couldn't help but wonder, who could she trust? And would she and Sarah make it out alive? The answers remained elusive, but one thing was certain, the stakes had never been higher, and the path ahead was fraught with Dr. Emily Carter's investigation had already unearthed a labyrinth of secrets, but nothing could have prepared her for the revelation that would shatter everything she thought she knew. It began innocuously enough, an unexpected phone call from her estranged father, whom she hadn't spoken to in years. His voice was strained, urgent. "Emily," he said, "you need to stop digging. You're getting too close." Confused and alarmed, Emily demanded an explanation, but her father abruptly hung up. The call left her shaken, but she couldn't afford to be distracted now. Determined to press on, Emily delved deeper into the mystery, uncovering more inconsistencies and hidden connections. She discovered that the adoption agency involved in Noah's placement had a history of questionable practices, including falsifying records and erasing identities. But just as she was piecing together the puzzle, a new and unexpected twist emerged. One evening, as Emily was reviewing her notes, she received an anonymous package. Inside was a photograph of a young boy, no older than Noah, with a strikingly similar birthmark on his chest. The accompanying note read, "This is your brother." Stunned, Emily stared at the photo, her mind racing. Could it be true? Did she have a sibling she never knew about? Screen rant. The implications were staggering. If this boy was indeed her brother, it meant that her entire life had been built on a lie. Her father's cryptic warning now made sense, he knew the truth and was trying to protect her from it. But why hadn't he told her? And who was behind this revelation? Inkit. Middle-aged club. As Emily grappled with these questions, she began to notice unsettling signs that she was being watched. Unmarked cars parked near her home, unfamiliar faces in her neighborhood, and strange phone calls with no one on the other end. The sense of paranoia grew, and Emily realized that uncovering the truth might come at a cost she wasn't prepared to pay. But she couldn't stop now. The need for answers consumed her. She reached out to the photographer who had taken the picture, hoping to trace its origins. The photographer confirmed that the photo was taken years ago in a small town in Alabama, but when Emily tried to obtain more information, she hit a dead end. The town had no record of the boy, and the photographer had no recollection of the session. Frustrated and desperate, Emily turned to her father again, confronting him about the photograph and the note. This time, he didn't hang up. Instead, he sighed deeply and said, "I should have told you sooner." He explained that years ago, he had been involved in a secret government experiment aimed at transferring consciousness between individuals. The experiment had been deemed a failure and was shut down, but not before it had irreversible consequences. Emily's mind reeled as her father detailed how Noah's birthmark was a result of the experiment, a physical manifestation of the consciousness transfer. The boy in the photograph was the original subject, but his consciousness had been transferred into Noah's body, creating a new identity. The adoption was part of an elaborate cover-up to conceal the experiment's existence. Screen rant. The revelation was more than Emily could process. Her life, her identity, had been built on a foundation of lies and manipulation. The people she trusted, her family, had been complicit in a government conspiracy that altered the course of her life. And now, she was left to pick up the pieces, to make sense of a reality that no longer made sense. Inkit. +2. NYC Scholastic Art and Writing Awards blog. +2. Screen rant. +2. As Emily sat in stunned silence, her father added one final, chilling detail: "You're not the only one. There were others like her, others whose lives had been altered by the experiment. Some had been adopted, others had disappeared without a trace." The full extent of the experiment's reach was unknown, but Emily knew one thing for certain: she was no longer just a victim, she was part of a larger, more sinister puzzle. The truth had been revealed, but with it came more questions than answers. Emily was left to navigate a world that had been turned upside down, to find her place in a reality that no longer felt real. And as she looked at the photograph of the boy who was once her brother, she couldn't help but wonder, how many others were out there, living lives built on the same lies? The answers remained elusive, but one thing was clear: Emily's journey was far from over. The truth had been uncovered, but the story was just beginning. The revelation had shaken Emily to her core. Her life, everything she thought she knew about herself, her family, and the world around her, had been turned upside down. But the truth was far from liberating. It was a chain, a burden that threatened to crush her under its weight. The more she uncovered, the more questions arose, each answer leading to another maze of confusion and fear. Her father's cryptic words still echoed in her ears, the horrifying reality of the government experiment too monstrous to fully comprehend. And yet, there she was, trapped in a web of secrets, desperate for answers but unable to trust anyone, not even those closest to her. Emily's phone rang, its sharp tone cutting through the heavy silence of her apartment. She hesitated before answering, her fingers trembling as she pressed the screen. Then it happened. Just as she was about to give up on reaching her father, her phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message, the words appearing in a chilling, familiar font. "You should have stopped digging. Your father's not coming. He never will." The message sent a shiver down her spine, but it wasn't just the words that unsettled her. The next image that appeared was a photo: her father, sitting in a dark room, his hands bound to a chair, his face bruised and blooded. The message was clear: they had him. Emily's stomach churned as the reality of the situation settled in. Whoever was behind this, whoever had orchestrated the cover-up, the threats, the surveillance, was not going to stop. This wasn't just a game of secrets anymore. This was life or death, and she was the target. Sarah, too. Her father was in their hands now, and the only way to save him and themselves was to play their twisted game. Torn between her sister and her father, Emily felt her world crumbling. She had already lost so much: her trust in everything she knew, the comfort of her own life. Now, the only thing left was the truth, and that truth was darker than anything she had ever imagined. The conspiracy wasn't just about Noah or the adoption agency anymore. It was global, sprawling, with roots that dug deep into the highest levels of government and private corporations. Emily's father wasn't just a participant in some rogue experiment, he was one of the architects of a covert operation so vast that its ripple effect was felt worldwide. And someone within the government, someone high up in the chain of command, had been watching them all along. Fear clenched at her chest as her phone buzzed again, this time with an unknown number. She answered, but the voice on the other end was distorted, robotic, sending chills down her spine. "You've crossed a line, Dr. Carter. If you want your father back, if you want your sister safe, stop asking questions. You've been warned. The next step is irreversible. Her breath caught in her throat. The sense of powerlessness threatened to drown her. Who could possibly have this much control? Emily's mind spun, thinking of every person she'd encountered, every clue she'd uncovered. There were no more safe choices, no easy way out. The conspiracy ran so deep that even the people closest to her could have been compromised. "I won't stop," she said through gritted teeth, her voice cold, steady. She didn't care about the threats anymore. They had crossed a line, touched her family, and that was the one thing she couldn't let go. Then came the response, an eerie silence before the voice came back, cold and final. "You don't have a choice." Suddenly, the apartment door slammed open, the sound so deafening that Emily jumped back in shock. Her pulse raced as she whipped around, but the person who entered wasn't who she expected. It was someone she had trusted implicitly, the one person she thought was on her side. It was Rachel, her longtime friend and colleague from the adoption agency. "Emily, I didn't want you to find out this way." Rachel's voice was low, almost apologetic, as she stepped into the room, her face betraying no emotion. "I'm sorry, but you were never meant to know this. You've already dug too deep. They're coming for you and for your sister. If you don't stop, there's nothing I can do to protect you." The words hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. Rachel. The one person she thought was there for her, someone who had been helping her with the investigation, was in on it all along. She had been feeding her the very information that would lead her down this dangerous path. "Why, Rachel? Why didn't you tell me? What the hell is going on?" Emily demanded, her voice trembling with anger and betrayal. But Rachel didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out a small device from her bag, a remote, and pressed a button. The lights flickered, the air seemed to grow heavy, and Emily's phone buzzed again. Another message, this time, a video. She opened it, her heart racing, but as the video played, her stomach dropped. It was a recording of her father alive, but barely. His eyes were wide with terror, his voice weak. "Emily, stop. It's too late. They'll kill us all if you don't stop." "Rachel, she's one of them." Emily's legs went numb. The world around her felt like it was collapsing, every fiber of her being screaming for escape, for answers, for some kind of way to make sense of the chaos that had consumed her life. But there were no answers now, just a horrifying truth that she had already crossed a point of no return. The conspiracy had taken everything. And now, with Rachel standing in front of her, and her father's life hanging by a thread, Emily had to make a choice that could seal all their fates. It was too much. It was all too much. And there was only one thing left to do, survive. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, the thrum of fear so loud that it drowned out everything else. Rachel's face, so familiar and yet now a symbol of everything that had gone wrong, was the last thing she wanted to see. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound ever could. It was the type of deception that wrapped around your heart like a vice, squeezing until you couldn't breathe. Rachel had been the one constant in Emily's chaotic search for the truth, the one person who had always stood by her. But now, standing in front of her, the woman who had once been her confidant was part of the very conspiracy that had ruined her life. Every ounce of trust she'd placed in Rachel shattered in that moment, and in its place, only a cold, suffocating rage remained. Rachel's eyes were devoid of any remorse, her face like a mask, implacable, as if all the warmth Emily had known was never there. "You should have stayed away from this, Emily," Rachel said, her voice calm, measured, as if they were talking about something trivial instead of life or death. "You were never meant to know the full picture. But now that you do, you're a threat. You always have been." The words felt like a slap in the face, but Emily wasn't going to back down. She wasn't going to let this woman, the woman who had helped her for so long, who had been a part of her family's life, get away with this. Not when her father's life was hanging by a thread, not when the twisted truth was finally within her grasp. Every step she'd taken had led to this moment, to this confrontation. But now, everything she thought she knew was in question, and there was no time left for second-guessing. "You're working with them, aren't you?" Emily's voice was low, trembling with anger. "All this time, you've been feeding me lies, keeping me in the dark. Why, Rachel? Why did you do it?" Rachel didn't flinch. She just stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as if she were pitying Emily's ignorance. "You don't understand, do you? This isn't just about your father. This is bigger than you, bigger than anyone. You're playing a part in something far more important than any of us. And all you've done is make it harder for the rest of us to clean up the mess you've created." A chilling silence filled the room. Every muscle in Emily's body was tense, her entire being on alert, ready for whatever Rachel would throw at her next. But the words had hit their mark, sinking deep into her mind. There was something about what Rachel said, the implications of it, that gnawed at her. Emily could feel it in her gut, the realization creeping in slowly, like the cold fingers of doubt curling around her heart. Before she could voice the questions swirling in her mind, the door slammed open again, and Emily whipped around to see a figure standing in the threshold. A man tall, his features sharp and impassive. Her breath hitched when she recognized him. It was Agent Carter. The one person who had been investigating her father's disappearance, the man who had been both a help and a hindrance in her quest for answers. He'd always been just a little too calm, too distant, but she never imagined he could be part of this twisted game. But now, standing before her, it was clear, Carter was no ally. He was one of them. "It's over, Dr. Carter," Agent Carter said, his voice cold as ice. He moved further into the room, his eyes never leaving hers. "You've dug too deep. You should have listened when we told you to stop. Now, the only thing left is to clean up the mess." Emily's pulse raced, her thoughts a chaotic swirl. Rachel. Agent Carter. They were both involved in something much darker than she had realized. And in that moment, something clicked, something she'd missed before. Her father's research, his connections, the cryptic warnings, even the mysterious disappearance of Noah. It all led back to the same place, a secret government program, an illegal experiment so vast that it was nearly impossible to track, and far-reaching enough to involve people in high places, in agencies Emily never thought would be corrupt. "You're not getting away with this," Emily spat, her anger igniting a fire deep within her. Her mind raced for a plan, anything to get the upper hand, but she knew time was running out. "If you think I'm just going to walk away from all this, you're wrong." Agent Carter smiled, an eerie, almost sympathetic smile that made Emily's skin crawl. "You're stubborn, I'll give you that. But your father knew what he was getting into. He's known all along. You've just been too blinded by your emotions to see it. We've been watching you, Emily. From the start." The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Her father had been involved in this from the beginning. He hadn't been a victim, he was complicit. He had known what was happening to Emily and Sarah all along, and yet he had stayed silent. The weight of that truth was suffocating. Emily's whole world tilted as she grappled with the crushing realization that the man she loved, the man who had raised her, had been part of the very system that had destroyed her life. And now, with Rachel and Agent Carter working together, she realized just how far the conspiracy stretched. There was no escaping it, no way to hide from the truth. The lies had been built so carefully, so methodically, that she had never stood a chance. But Emily wasn't going to go down without a fight. She couldn't. Not now, not after everything she had sacrificed, everything she had lost. She couldn't let them win. Without thinking, she lunged forward, grabbing the first thing she could find, an old lamp sitting on a nearby table, and swung it toward Rachel. The impact sent Rachel stumbling back, and in that moment, the atmosphere shifted. Everything moved in a blur. Agent Carter lunged for her, but Emily sidestepped, her pulse racing as adrenaline surged through her veins. She could hear the sounds of her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, her breath coming in rapid gasps as she tried to stay one step ahead. In the chaos, Emily caught a glimpse of something on the floor, an envelope. She didn't hesitate. Grabbing it, she tore it open, her hands shaking as she pulled out a set of photographs, old and yellowed with age. Her eyes scanned them, and then everything stopped. The photos were of her father, no, not just her father. She saw her father, Rachel, and Agent Carter, all together, standing in front of a building Emily recognized, the very facility she had been trying to uncover, the place where everything had started. The place where her father had been conducting his experiments. The place where they had been controlling the fate of countless families, including hers. Her stomach churned as she read the words scribbled on the back of one photo. Project Phoenix, Subject 47. All tests successful. And just like that, everything came into focus. The mystery, the deception, the loss, it was all a part of the same twisted plan. The experiments on families, the manipulations, the lies, they were all part of a larger, far more sinister agenda. And her family had been at the center of it. The final twist was too much to process in that moment. She was more than just a victim. She was part of something much bigger, something her father had engineered. Emily wasn't just fighting for answers anymore. She was fighting for her life, for her family's survival, and for the truth that had been buried for years. The room was still, the dust settling after the storm of chaos that had engulfed Emily's life for so long. Rachel and Agent Carter lay unconscious on the floor, the remnants of the struggle still hanging in the air like a weight that threatened to crush her. Her hands trembled as she wiped away the blood from a gash on her forehead, the pain barely registering over the tidal wave of emotions crashing through her. Her father was gone, lost to a conspiracy that stretched so far beyond anything she had imagined. But somehow, through it all, she had managed to uncover the truth, at least, the part of it that had been hidden in plain sight. The photographs she had found, the final piece of evidence, had exposed the foundation of everything. Project Phoenix, the twisted experiment that had played with the lives of countless families, including her own. It was real. And it was far from over. But despite the victory of finally uncovering the truth, there was no sense of relief. No satisfaction in the justice she had fought so hard to achieve. Her father's involvement in Project Phoenix, his role in the orchestrated destruction of their lives, it had shattered her. She had spent years idolizing him, trusting him above all others. But now, she knew the truth. Her father had been a part of something much darker than she could ever have imagined. The anger she felt toward him burned inside her, but there was also a deep sadness, an aching void where the love for the man who had raised her used to be. Emily knew the path forward wouldn't be easy. There was no going back to the life she had once known. The evidence she had gathered enough to bring down the people responsible for Project Phoenix was damning. But even with everything she had learned, there was still so much left unanswered. How far did the conspiracy reach? Who else was involved? And what was the true purpose of Project Phoenix? She had exposed the lies, but the darkness still loomed, its full extent hidden beneath layers of secrecy. With a heavy heart, Emily stood up, taking one last look around the room where everything had come to a head. She knew she had to keep going. There was no choice but to push forward, to bring what she had uncovered into the light, to make sure that the families torn apart by this twisted experiment didn't suffer in silence anymore. But even as she made that decision, a small part of her wondered if the battle would ever truly end. The conspiracy had run so deep, infiltrating so many parts of society, that exposing the truth seemed like only the beginning. The weight of that realization sat heavy on her shoulders, a reminder that there was always more beneath the surface, always more to uncover. Just as she was about to leave, her phone buzzed, and for a moment, Emily hesitated. She had been bracing for one final message, a warning, a threat. But when she checked the screen, her heart skipped a beat. It was a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won. But the game's far from over." The message was brief, its meaning chilling, and it sent a jolt of fear through her. She quickly deleted the message and left the building, the weight of what she had learned still pressing on her chest. Outside, the world felt different, quieter, as if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for her next move. She had come so far, and yet, the road ahead felt even longer than before. The truth had been revealed, but at what cost? What kind of world had she uncovered? The silence around her was suffocating, filled with unspoken questions, lingering doubts that would take years if not a lifetime to answer. Emily took a deep breath and glanced back at the building one last time, as if trying to mentally lock away the memories of everything she had just gone through. She knew she couldn't erase what had happened, couldn't forget the people she had lost, the relationships that had been irrevocably changed. But what she could do was continue. For herself. For her father, in some twisted way. For every family that had been part of the experiment. There was more to uncover, and she was ready to face it. And as she walked away, a final thought lingered in her mind, a question that had been haunting her ever since she'd started on this journey. Was the truth ever truly worth it? The people she had trusted had betrayed her, and the answers she had sought had only led to more confusion. There were still so many pieces of the puzzle left unturned, so many lies still buried. The real enemy, whoever they were, remained hidden in the shadows. But Emily knew one thing for certain: the story wasn't over. The truth had been exposed, but the war was far from finished. And in the back of her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real danger was still waiting. Still watching. As the screen faded to black, the final shot lingered for a moment longer than necessary, a hint of uncertainty in the air, leaving the audience with a sense of unease and anticipation. The mystery may have been solved, but it wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. With no more time to waste, Emily made her choice. She wouldn't be the one to bury the truth. She wouldn't be the one to let this conspiracy go unchecked. In that moment, she knew she had to expose it all, no matter the cost. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun.